Goes for goal and finishes off the PSG victory.
Mendes est lancé, Nuno Mendes navigue, Nuno Mendes passe devant trois Dardo, le tir, oh il est beau celui-là, le but de Nuno Mendes.
You know the football, it is what it is.
Le premier but de Ronald Colomboigny avec le Paris Saint-Germain, quelle joie.
Hello and welcome to PSG Review, also known as the show ready for the February, which has now started, and it is a huge month for us with our red and blue shirt with Go Faster stripes. A lot to look forward to, also known as the show that is telling you if you don't follow our women's team already, you're really missing out on some of the most amazing storylines, ups and downs. I almost had a heart attack watching the most remarkable match in a very long time when they drew with Bayern Munich on Tuesday the 30th, but it was enough to win the group of death and start preparing for the Champions League quarterfinals. My name is Mikko. Great to have you listening today, and we really have a strong show for you this week. I know I always say it, but it's true, and this week it's particularly accurate. Find and follow and talk to me online at PSG Review Pod on Twitter and at PSG Review on Instagram and TikTok. What I wanted to talk to you about today wasn't so much specifically related to any match or so. You have either seen them or you haven't. It has been what it has been, and I'm not offering any kind of blow-by-blow account of that. What I think isn't just more interesting but also more important is to look at the big picture. We have had new manager now for half a year or so, perhaps just over that, and many things have changed in the club, but what are the strengths and the weaknesses of the squad currently as we are working our way towards some of the crucial games of the season? A little more about that in a moment. I will also mention it right here, right now, that there is yet another Kylian Mbappé rumor that claims that his decision has been made and he's leaving Paris. Let's get that out of the way. They always come with such certainty, these rumors, and then become some watered down version in sort of 30 minutes time online, and from 100% definitely and irreversibly yes, sort of to a perhaps it could be, but nothing has been decided, and there are actually quite a few things that haven't been ironed out at all, and these are according to the rumors as they are. It's more or less same every time, and mind you, what I'm not saying at all that it's impossible for him to leave. He may or may not go, but just that none of these reports so far are any type of conclusive evidence to confirm it. It is a dance, and I have said this before, but we are dealing with the scoop of, let's say, decade. It's sort of scoop of the decade, what he will do, and everyone wants to be the one getting that on their CV. And it's also not difficult to guess, because essentially it's 50-50 setup. Yes or no, stay or go. If he goes, there's mainly one team that is out to get him, but everyone has been wrong about this before, and back then they were even more certain that he will go than what they are now, but all of them ended up being wrong. Each and every one of them, all of them. That's the nature of this. Now, if Mbappé goes, then he does go. We will have no transfer fee to look forward to, as he will be free agent then, and he is already, of course, allowed to have his negotiations or even sign a contract. But there is no club in this world, as has been proven beyond any doubt, that can bully him or push him into decision that is not 100% his decision. And there certainly aren't any journalists that will have an inside access to him. The rumors might come from Real Madrid structure, and they may be exaggerated for effect, but nothing conclusive is out right now. And financially for PSG, if he does go, a huge proportion of our wage bill will disappear, and according to fairly reliable information, some loyalty bonuses that had been promised would be spared. This much even Mbappé himself has at least implied in his interviews. We will know what he will do in the next half a year. He will want to play the Home Olympics next summer, and so far I gather that PSG is the only club that guarantees that for him, but whatever happens, we will know in the months to come, and I'm fairly content with any outcome, whether he goes or whether he stays. He is the best in the world, but at the same time, his presence dictates the system. So in his absence, there's more wiggle room for the players that we have so that they can play up to their potential. And there are already some rumors that if he leaves, PSG would go after Rafael Leao from AC Milan and Portuguese national team, of course, but it's quite early for that. And also, Leao is a left winger where we also have Barcola now. I mean, Mbappé hasn't really played too much there, as a traditional left winger. So what would that mean for the formation if Leao came? What would that mean for Bradley Barcola, who is having a lot of good energy behind him at the moment? We have quite a good selection of attacking players all in all, with Barcola, Dembele, Asensio, Gonzalo Ramos, Randal Colomwani. Xavi Simons will be coming back to Paris most probably, and then there's Lee Kang-in can also be added to the mix, and Nuno Mendes will be back soon, and he will also be attacking from that left side pretty aggressively. So difficult to say what the plan is, but I assume that PSG isn't yet fully in the post-Mbappé planning because his departure isn't a sure thing, but of course that possibility has to be considered, very much so. The transfer window is closed now. Not too much action during it. I think the deals were more or less confirmed before the whole thing even started, and we have now signed Lucas Beraldo for the defensive line and Gabriel Mosardo for the midfield. Both of them are young and Brazilian. We had been uncharacteristically low on Brazilian squad members, with only Marquinhos leading from the back, but now it starts looking more like the usual in terms of numbers, at least. A lot of potential with both of these players. Shendour is going to Braga for half a season and hopefully get some minutes, and then Noah Lemina changed his loan in Italy to a loan in the West Midlands of England to Wolverhampton, which is very close to Birmingham. Not in any way part of it, just nearby. His deal has an option to buy and reportedly 25% sell-on clause, which is the type of deal that they have been doing with these young players. Basically, if anything happens with them and they become huge, there's a nice slice coming to us without any pressure, really. But this is loan now, and it's an option, not obligation to buy. I think Lemina has great future, certainly good one, but he just needs to go somewhere to play and pay his dues for that to happen. Ugo Ekitike deal in the end also happened, and he has now gone to Frankfurt on loan. He's already been playing there. A little bit of unclarity of the precise terms of that deal. There's an option or obligation to buy after a loan deal, but what it is isn't known, or that information hasn't certainly reached me at the time of recording, but it could easily be an option that becomes an obligation quite easily. I mean, I give you an example. A couple of years ago, Danilo, when he came to Paris, he came with an option to buy, but the option then became an obligation if Paris finished. I think it was in the top 2 of Ligue 1 that season. It was along those lines, and that's what I imagine this Ekitike deal could also be, a sort of fairly easily triggered obligation, although, like I said, I don't have the specific, but I gathered that that was the spirit of the deal. Edouard Michou had been loaned to the Turkish club Adana Demirspor, and they have now also activated the purchase option, so he no longer is our player. I wish him good luck. Another one of those that, unless the luck turns entirely against him, he could have a great career ahead of him as long as he gets minutes and stays healthy, but like I said, he no longer is in our books. So that's been achieved. Not a huge traffic to or fro, but a little bit of something nevertheless. More or less what you would expect from January window, certainly after all the business last summer. I mean, it was pretty intense business period for PSG. All the rumors about Leny Yoro, Bruno Guimaraes or even Joshua Kimmich were not really close to happening, but some of them could be revisited in the summer, and one storyline that has been active throughout the whole January, of course, was Nordi Mukele's departure to Bayern. But he's here, still our player. He hasn't been favored by Luis Enrique, and that was the reason, I think, why he wanted to leave. But let's have a bit of a look, see how it's going with Enrique, all things considered. PSG is heading towards the most important part of the season, one that will decide the success or failure or something in between of this campaign as far as the Champions League goes. And by the way, I'm not only talking about the Champions League alone, because I'm also talking about Coupe de France as well as Ligue 1, of course. But as far as the Champions League goes, this has been the hurdle we've stumbled on, the wall we've crashed into quite a few times. Not in any ways all the time. That storyline tends to be exaggerated for effect fairly frequently and casually by the press and football fans who don't necessarily have our best interest at heart. But for a while now, it's been the end of our European campaign here in the round of 16. For once, we have an opponent that on paper isn't one of the top teams. And don't get me wrong, I don't say this with any kind of arrogance or in any way lightly. This isn't me being flippant about it, because the truth is that only with certain type of humility can we do anything, the right kind of humility. And if you don't have it, you might end up being humiliated, and that's always the worst option of the two. But where are we now in this process? The project is still new. It's not as new as it was last autumn, but let's face it, a near total overhaul of the squad and bringing in a new manager. It's not an overnight thing to get these things clicking, especially as you could even call this overhaul a youthquake. So many new young players have come in, and what they excel in technique and speed, they lack sometimes in the maturity or even at the very least experience, because how could they not? And this is not me being negative about anything. Actually, let me say this, I feel very positive about the overall state of affairs, but I do think there are some lessons to be learned from what has happened so far, and we would ignore them at our peril. Luis Enrique has done a very good job at getting the team to play with the new identity, and it's really lovely attacking, possession-based football with quick counter-pressing. It's fun to watch, especially when things work out. It's a real pleasure, and after the times we have had with Pochettino and to an extent with Galtier, I really appreciate the way we have played and how it has looked. But Enrique also is quite a stubborn man. It's not necessarily the end of the world, but it's sort of a red flag, a reddish flag at the very least. Not one that would make me call for his resignation, of course, but, something to consider, something to keep an eye on. Obviously, see, sometimes there's this quite dramatic idea that if you have anything negative to say about anything, that it means that you hate it and you'll go all in. These are the football hot takes that I don't really do. I'm a Nordic person. I don't do drama very well, but it's perfectly okay to look into what's been happening and then to try to understand it. And Luis Enrique comes across quite stubborn. He seems unwilling to change anything much about the system. Not even very eager to admit any mistake that he might have made, a miscalculation or so forth. And he has the system and he likes to play with it regardless of who is available. And I have already in many episodes before mentioned how he has been basically driving Nordi Mukiele out of our club. And like I mentioned, he didn't leave because the deal fell apart and Bayern signed another player on that position. But at this rate, it may happen in the summer. And for the life of me, I can't understand why can't we give him more opportunities, especially now that Hakimi has been away. Of course, now he's back. He is out of the African Cup of Nations because Morocco was knocked out by South Africa. But, still, nevertheless, he's been away and now he's back. So it would have been nice to see a little bit more of Mukiele because personally, while I think that he is more of a defensive player than offensive one, certainly more so than Hakimi, but it's not like he's unable to attack. I don't think he'd be useless in the role as it has been played by Hakimi or in his absence by Soler or Warren Zaire-Emery. And let's talk about Soler first. He's been okay this season, playing many different positions, but in my books, he's a reasonable rotation player. He's not a starter for a potential Champions League contender, and that's what we should be. And also, he's not a defender. There was some evidence of that in Strasbourg when they scored their goal, but of course, this wasn't a shocking surprise. Carlos Soler isn't a defender like Ousmane Dembele is not a goalkeeper. It's pretty clear, straightforward truism. And as far as Warren Zaire-Emery goes, well, he can play that position, but he's also one of our key midfielders. So then he is away from there where he's also very much needed. But even then, even if we said that Mukiele, and this is not only about him, he's really just an example of a bigger situation that I'm talking about. Even if he wasn't quite good enough for that specific role that Hakimi likes to play in this system that Enrique prefers, surely sometimes you have to utilize a system that is the best working system for which you have players for. In the Brest match, there was a good example because we were leading with 2 goals but lost that lead and drew the match in the end without doing anything to strengthen our defense or midfield. And Brest was pushing hard and had clearly superior mentality. It sort of needed from us a moment of calm and get back to basics, to have less attacking outfit and ensure that the midfield and defense holds, because wasting 2-goal lead. And I'm not saying that it was only the fault of the coach, because we can see how the players play and how they were just getting frustrated and lost their temper and their level. But This could be remedied with right substitution and adjustments. We have players for that. And of course, the same or certainly very similar thing applied also against Strasbourg, even if our 2-goal lead was enough in the end, but they did pull 1 goal back. But it wasn't out of question that they could have equaled. It wasn't a world away, that scenario, as we were unable to even cross the halfway line for the last 10 minutes or so. That's certainly how it felt. It's good to have a system that you follow, but sometimes you need to have that sensibility to adjust and consider who are you playing against. It's like the away match in Newcastle during the Champions League group stage. You need a strong midfield. That's pretty evident, and not fielding one of those, even if you have players available for that, is pretty arrogant. So my point is that you can't just have our team as a reference point and let others react and respond to it. We also need to react and respond to our opponents as they play. Look, and I know that Luis Enrique knows a lot more about football than me, and I also know that you can't always just win. That's not my expectation, but it seems perfectly reasonable to me to ask these questions and wonder, could another approach bring better results when the system you have doesn't quite cut it, when things aren't clicking within a specific match? Let's say halftime, when you have a halftime talk, maybe you make a readjustment here and there because you need to react to what's happening on the pitch and not just play your football, with the blinkers on. And that's not, of course, again, like, let me just, say, this is not me calling for his sacking. And actually, I tend to stand behind the coaches sometimes even too long, wanting to give them the opportunity and for their vision to come to life and work, more than anything else, to give us the results. And the last thing that PSG needs is to continuously be part of this manager merry-go-round. I mean, Xavi will now leave Barcelona, and they apparently would have been keen on Enrique's services, according to some rumors at least. And of course, Jurgen Klopp will also leave Liverpool and take a break. So there will be rumors. Rumors will be oncoming, probably, certainly next summer, maybe even before that. But I don't want us to get into this again. I would wish for us to have some stability for some time and build a project. And I have no problem with the project that we have. I quite like the way that we play, especially when it works. That kind of like our best level, our best system, when it works like it should be. It's fun, it's nice to watch, and it's a pleasure to watch. I like that style of playing, and like said, it's 1,000 times more entertaining than whatever we have seen for quite a few years before this season in Paris. So it's important to give the managers some time even not to be able to make things work. And my challenge isn't so much that things aren't working. Like I said, they are working when they are working, but this is just to say I'd like to see a little bit more flexibility when needed, a little bit more trust on players like Gonzalo Ramos and Nordi Mukiele, and also a little less hard-headedness by the manager. And the reason maybe why I'm talking about this now, because one of the key players of PSG for this season, Achraf Hakimi, has been away pretty much for the whole January. He was playing in Trophée des Champions match against Toulouse, but after that he went to the African Cup of Nations, and now Morocco, his national team, is no longer playing there, so he's back in Paris and probably playing in the forthcoming matches quite soon, because I would imagine that this hasn't had a huge impact on his on his level. I'm sure he might be disappointed in the way that the tournament ended, because Morocco was one of the favorites to go all the way and win the tournament, but that didn't happen. So I understand he might be quite frustrated and disappointed, but I don't think that this will necessarily make the world of difference to his level in a big picture, because he also has good friends in Paris who will probably help him to reclimatize back to the Parisian weather and style and just the locker room and the whole squad as it is. But when Hakimi has been away, we have been missing one of the key players of Enrique's system. He has a system and he's got certain parts that are very key for it to function, and when we haven't had it, it has been showing. We have been trying to force players into those positions, like a square peg in a round hole, like the old cliche goes. So that's the thing. I don't have a problem with PSG's system as it is when it works as it should. But I have my considerations, and perhaps this is exactly the reason why I'm talking about it, because we have gone through a brief period of this season when we haven't had all those players available that we need. Then it feels like Luis Enrique hasn't yet necessarily been able to adjust the way that I think he needs to be able to do when we are going forward in the future. So it is what it is. And another thing that, I think should happen, and this is something that I'm not saying in any kind of heat of moment, this is not impacted by any of the news, rumors, gossips, none of that things. And I don't think that I will regret this later, but I do think that Kylian Mbappé should rest a little bit more. We have very big and important matches ahead, and we will need him sharp. Because yes, he is the best player in the world, certainly so in my view, but no one is Superman, and he needs to rest, which he hasn't done since he was reintroduced into the squad. And we also need to start having options, because if he was unable to play in any given match, especially in some of the most important matches due to an injury or even suspension or anything like that, we don't have an attack that has been tested without him this season, really. And I think that it would be pretty nifty to try something else out, just as a backup. See how it works. Put Ramos in the middle and see if we can cross the ball to him, have some players on either side and do it like that. Because Kylian, like anyone else, will need some rest at some point. It's very simple, and I keep on saying this. I know I'm repeating myself because I do believe this to be true, but he will most likely not only start every match with PSG and probably the French national team this spring, but also in the Euros as well as in the Olympics. And I've also said that then, it might not even be our problem anymore. It might be some other club's problem, but it's not healthy. It's not good for him. His competitive nature is insane. It's incredible, but what good is it to play every match if you have performances like the one against Brest, for example? It was very forgettable, and we have other players on the bench who could give it a try and see what comes out. And, then maybe he can come out of the bench if needs be, but I think it would be helpful and healthy for him and also for the team for there to be other alternatives, not just him. And if that then upsets him, this kind of idea, and makes him choose another club, if he already hasn't, I mean, he could have already, I don't know, then that's that. It is what it is. We can't just walk on eggshells around him until the end of the season. That's not healthy dynamic either for a winning club that is supposed to be bigger than any one player. PSG has survived all the previous players leaving the club. Not even very long time ago when Zlatan left, and it wasn't always easy, but then, you get into a new thing and new players come, then Mbappé himself and Neymar came and things started to change. Cavani was scoring a lot of goals, then Cavani left. There's no player that has ever played for PSG that we haven't survived their departure. And Kylian Mbappé, if he leaves, well, he's going to be then the latest name in that long line of great players that have at some point in their career been wearing our shirt. These are the few concerns. I think it's fair to mention while we are a few weeks away from the period that will make or break the season. The rehearsal time starts to run out, so this is, as they say, the business, and it's time to start delivering, or otherwise we will wait until the next attempt, like so many times before, to go all the way. It does require a lot, and perhaps it is unfair to even put that pressure on this team as new as it is. The season, but we certainly should aim for getting to the next round of Champions League. If we play like we played against Brest or Strasbourg, there's a chance that it won't happen. I tell you this, if we play like that in the next match against Brest, we might not even get to the next round of Coupe de France, and that would be an issue for me. I would not be very happy about that. So it's time to be very pragmatic and realistic about it. Being an idealist might not win you much. I'm not concerned about Ligue 1 as such because it's a long enough competition, and I trust that the team can deliver regularly enough to take care of it, especially since we lead, but we are also, of course, a great Ligue 1 team. But these lapses in control, concentration and temper might backfire in a whole different way in a cup competition where one bad night might mean that you are out for the whole season. 2 years ago, we had like an awful 10 minutes or so against Real Madrid, and they made mockery of us. It's a very unforgiving environment, and there needs to be a plan in place, options on the bench, and wisdom to use them. PSG's women's team, where do you even start with them? After the most incredible match, and I don't say this lightly, we topped the by far toughest Champions League group by drawing against Bayern, away. We were moments away from finishing third and being out of the whole race. But through an immense battle, we beat Bayern, Ajax and AS Roma in the big picture, finishing on top of the group. And now we are waiting for the draw for our next opponent, which will be either Benfica, Brann from Norway or Häcken from Sweden. And while every team is there on merit, I'm not sure if all of these teams would have qualified through from our group. For instance, the standing German champion Bayern are out. It's also noteworthy that if we would have been the runner-up in the group, the second we would face either Barcelona or Chelsea. Lyon, of course, also topped their group, but at this point I think it's still too early to play another team from the same league. So huge difference in the level of opposition because we were on top and not second. The January transfers were quite conservative, nothing too much happening, no particular strengthening of the problem areas, although I am looking forward to seeing how our new signing from the United States, Eva Gettino, will fare in the central defense where we need a lot of help. So hopefully she will be very good. She's coming from Notre Dame. I'm trying to do the American pronunciation because that is the one that applies in this instance. And another new player is young Polish goalkeeper Olivia Sperkowska. We will see where she falls in the hierarchy. Is she going to be first, second or third? My guess would be maybe third for now, and then we will see how it's going to go after that. She should be very promising. So good things are possible, not sure how probable they are, and they definitely aren't inevitable for this team, but hopefully it will all consolidate this spring. Up next for men's team is Brest Wednesday night at Parc des Princes, and that's then Coupe de France round of 16. And after that it's Lille in Ligue 1 and then Real Sociedad in the Champions League. And all these matches are home matches, but none of them are in any way easy. For women, we have a trip to Lyon ahead of them, the toughest domestic match of the season, and after that, Le Puy on Coupe de France quarterfinals. My name is Mikko, and that is all for this episode of PSG Review. Thank you for having spent this moment with me, and good luck. Good luck to all of us. Take care, and until next time, peace.